Hey folks, what's up? Today we're going to talk about the 193 scope mount and all the questions that I see all over the internet, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, or not Facebook, I don't use Facebook, but YouTube, some of my videos about the Steiner P4XI, which is a primetime optic. Have tons of questions about the 193, and I figured eventually, I'll have to do a video about that in my experience with it and what I suggest. And I've compiled a little bit of data across the internet, stored up here. We'll try to see if I can get it all out and talk about this thing. Couple things. The reason why there's so many questions is because there is no budget manufacturers of 193 scope mounts. Tons of budget manufacturers where you can get a primary arm scope mount for 50-60 bucks at a 1.5 level, at the normal default AR level. If you could do the same for 193s, people would experiment more and not worry about this stuff and just kind of say, hey, at the most, if I hate it, if I absolutely can't take it, I'm out 50, 60 bucks. So the reason it's so hard is because these things start around 175 and up. You're looking at Midwest Defense, ADM, Geisley, Scalar Works. There's a good bit of companies out there, but they're all fairly good, solid companies, and you're just not going to find them for anything cheaper than that. Now, I know Midwest is coming out with a non-QD version that they're going to offer in 193, and that should be a pretty good option. I'll probably end up getting one of them myself for another gun here eventually when I need it, but might be a little lighter as well. But that's the reason. It's a big investment, and it's for something you're not sure that you need. And a lot of guys at the range or whatever might not be running around with 193 mounts on their guns that you can test out and check out and see if you like it. What this video will talk about is a couple things. One, a couple disqualifiers, so we'll get into that real quick. And then two, the 193 mount is not nearly as tall as you think it is. The lower 1/3 co-witness red dot mount, okay? Normal red dot mount, lower 1/3 co-witness is probably the most popular. And it is 1.75 inches from the top of the rail to the center line of the optic. 193 mounts are 193 from the top of the rail to the center line of the optic. That is less than 2/10. That's 1/1800ths difference between the two. Very, very little difference. When you're looking at one of these, it looks like it's up there, like it's going to be crazy different. And from a 1.5 scope mount, it's 4,300ths different. But think about your lower 1/3 co-witness red dot mount, and that less than 2/10 difference. You're thinking, okay, not that big of a deal now. So kind of think about that. And the disqualifiers, if you're doing precision shooting or you're using anything with higher magnification than a low power variable. So if it's not a 1:4, 1:8, 1:6, 1:4, 1 to something, if it doesn't have a true 1 power with a quick aiming device, quick aiming reticle in it, the 193, the pros are not going to outweigh the cons. And if you're doing a lot of, in the same kind of page, if you're doing a lot of precision shooting, a lot of prone shooting, and you want high precision, you're using your ARs, AR-15, AR-10 for that sort of shooting, the 193 is probably just going to be a non-starter on that front as well. For a couple reasons. In the prone, it's less comfortable. The 193 mount is more comfortable all the time. Okay? Everything that we do with it is more comfortable. In the prone, it's actually less comfortable, because instead of burying your face, resting it nicely on that cheek weld and just kind of sagging down behind the gun, you're kind of like this in the prone. So it's less comfortable. Then if you know anything about precision shooting, cheek weld is a huge thing. You want as much of it as possible, and you want it to be as repeatable as possible. With the 193 scope mount, the cheek weld is not as repeatable. So if you're doing more dynamic run and gun stuff or 3-gun type stuff, the 193 is going to be just fine. If you're doing a whole lot of precision work or a higher magnified optic, don't even bother. So now we'll talk about the pros. That's about the only real cons there is to it. Other than that, it's very small, nitpicky things and personal preference back and forth. Let's talk about the pros. So it's faster. It's more comfortable. It's faster because you get on sights quicker, on triggers quicker. You're able to do work faster. It's more comfortable because I don't have to jam down behind the gun or jam down behind that scope to get my full scope and sight picture. And the biggest reason I recommend it to more beginner shooters and novice shooters, or anybody who's just getting into the LVPO game, is it'll make you a better shooter. And why I say that is because it'll actually, change the way you shoot a little bit. Your posture, your stance behind the gun, your entire package behind the gun will be better using the 193 because you don't have to turtle out. You don't have to, it's more conducive to bringing the gun up to your eye line instead of bringing your eyeballs down to the gun and trying to do that whole thing. And it actually will correct or teach you better habits in the first place, or correct some bad habits maybe that you have going on. So if you're doing a lot of quick shooting, a lot of red dot type shooting with your LVPO, but you just want the ability to crank it up every once in a while, and that's the entire reason to have one of these. The 193 is pretty awesome. Other than that, it's really good for weird position shooting. So if you have a quality LVPO, one that isn't going to go crazy with parallax if you're looking at it a little bit goofy. When you're in weird ass positions with this thing and you want to get on it with the 1.5 mount, sometimes if you're in a weird position, you got to really shove your face and your orbital sometimes, or your chin or whatever it is, to get down tight enough to actually get behind that scope. With this little bit of standoff, you can get behind it real easy and then just figure out a way to get steady. You can see, it's just much easier, I've found, to get behind in awkward positions because of that little bit of standoff. It's just a little bit further away from the gun itself, and it allows you to get in there and get on some sights quicker. And that's the whole name of the game. So other than that, it's got some small quirky little things that you might not like. Every now and then you'll find maybe that standoff and the height over bore issues is an issue. If you're shooting very close, 10 yards and in, you damn sure better get your height over board stuff figured out. Okay, it's a pretty good bit, but like I said, lower 1/3 co-witness and the 193, not that different. You're talking about a little bit. So not that big of a deal. It's not this giant skyscraper like some people make it out to be. But still, it is 2 and some change over your barrel, so you better get your shit together on height over bore and do some practice up close. 10 yards and in, you're going to have some issues with it as you get out 15, 20, 25, depending if you're 100 yards 0, 50 yards 0, whatever. You're just going to have to figure that stuff out as you would with any setup. Now, I'm trying to think. I want this to be a pretty good guide to people because there's just so many questions about it. One other thing here is this thing. I sold my Surefire light to get a mod light set up, and I don't have it yet. I'll have it in a little bit, but for now, when this thing goes to home defense duty, which is a 12-inch gun, it's a perfect gun for it, I will just strap this thing, just plop this right on, clip it right on, and they actually work really good for this right center line of the gun. It's ambidextrous no matter what shoulder you're on, it's all good. Works really well actually, and I like the TLR1 I actually like more on a rifle than the Surefire, which Surefire I like more on pistols, but whatever. It's not the coolest looking thing, but it does function very, very well, and inside your house, you don't need 10,000 feet of throw shooting 15 yards at max. But when you have the 193, you're not looking at the ass end of your light. You're looking over it. So if you ever have this kind of setup or just anything out here, that's why they were intended, or That's why their inception was developed in the first place, is to get over lasers, D-ball, IPL, see the box lasers that sit out on the end of the guns. The guys that were running them wanted to be able to run a low power variable, and it's just not going to happen with a 1.5, because you're looking right into the ass end of your laser and stuff. So same kind of thing when you got a light or something like that up there, or maybe a cloud defensive pressure pad, or the new big cloud defensive optimized weapon light, stuff like that. The 193 is going to get you up and away from that kind of clutter up there. It's non-distracting. You're going to look right over top of it, not see it. All gravy stuff. But for me, the biggest thing is just the simple comfortability of getting on the gun, getting it up to my face, getting out, getting on sights and triggers quicker, and it allows me to run my stock further out and still get some cheek weld, and there's some things you can play with that. But I recommend, if you're going to run the 193, make sure that you're running your stock out a little bit further than you think, especially if you were taught, you know, to run it like this or something 10 years ago or whatever, when that was all the rage. But definitely want to run that stock a little further out, and that way you can get some cheek weld on it, because the further you come into it, stock wise, the further up you're going to be. You're not going to get much cheek weld. But these are all things you have to play with yourself. I think you should go ahead and just buy it. Just do it. You will like it, but you have to give it its time. You have to give it its due diligence and figure out what you like. But I believe it's a solid winner. Take her easy. Check it out.